All right, guys. Well, welcome back. It's been a little stint for us in terms of recording. I know episodes have been coming out monthly, but David Vogel, welcome back, mate. You've just had a couple of months in Hawaii.
Thank you.
Really great to have you here. Barry, you had your time in Colorado.
Yeah.
Great to have you back. And today, well, this is a very special episode for us because the first time we're having a guest on the show, Tristan Starling-Smith, who's our in-house physiologist and arguably one of the greatest physiologists I've ever seen work. And I'm saying that after 30 years of being in professional sport and having so many great physiologists on my own personal podcast for many, many years. And so to have you sit with us is a real honor, mate. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, this episode's going to be really exciting. The fact that we're able to sit with somebody who truly knows biometrics at a very, very deep level. But I want to sort of move on in this episode to not only talk about your background, physiology, but I want to understand how we're using physiology, not just in high-performance sport, but now for everyday people.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I kind of feel like physiology has always been this thing that high-performance athletes have, and now we're actually saying, actually, this could be really beneficial for everybody else. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. But to start the show off, mate, what I'd love, Tristan, if you could just rewind the clock a little bit, give us a little bit of a background to who you are, tell us your journey into the field of physiology.
Absolutely, yeah. So I have 3 degrees in exercise physiology. So I did undergraduate, master's, and PhD. Undergraduate in human performance, master's in exercise physiology, same thing with the PhD. I started in finance, though. So I switched over to exercise physiology after seeing their labs.
I knew I liked that.
Yeah, so I was a finance major, and I started going into their research labs. I played lacrosse, so I liked running, I liked lifting. And once I saw the labs, I knew that I needed to understand sort of what they were doing in there. I had a coach tell me once, I need you to learn how to run forever. And I took it very literally and realized pretty quickly I had no idea how to do that. So basically, he said run forever. I would just go out and run basically zone 5 intervals. And I was getting faster, but I wasn't gaining any endurance, and I didn't understand why. So I really got into this field to understand exactly how to manipulate my body and other people's bodies to achieve whatever goal it is that they're looking to achieve.
That's you make me feel like a dummy with all those degrees. Well, not these two, they're the same as you, but you make me feel like a dummy with all those degrees, mate. It's really impressive stuff. And I guess understanding a little bit more, what is physiology? You've gone and studied this, you just touched on it, but what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so exercise physiology specifically is the study of how an individual is going to respond given an exercise stimulus across the board. When it comes to elite athletes, that is in a training setting, trying to push performance VO2 max, power outputs, whatever it may be. But most individuals will only interact with an exercise physiologist after they've had a heart attack. You'll find us in a cardiac rehab center, and we're going to have you doing a walking test on the treadmill to make sure you're not about to have another cardiac event. So for the general population, that's probably the only time they'll ever encounter an exercise physiologist is post-serious cardiac event. But
that's changing in your view, right?
Yeah, that's starting to change a little bit now, getting a little bit more proactive, like the proactive health that we're doing here, where individuals are realizing that you can manipulate these things way earlier, 10, 15 years before they're occurring. And that's probably when you should see an exercise physiologist, not immediately after you've had a heart attack and they're making sure you could leave the hospital without having another one.
It's funny, I read something this morning actually right before we're recording this, and we talk about proactive and reactive medicine, and that 97% of US spending is on reactive medicine. 97%. And so you think this podcast, what we're trying to do here, your role in physiology, just trying to change that so people can actually understand that working with a physiologist before things happen but it's hard for people to find a physiologist.
Yeah, it is.
Where do they go? Where do you go?
Yeah, it's hard because undergraduate exercise physiologists, they're going to tend to go into the hospital system and be in those cardiac rehab settings. And then you get master's and PhD level exercise physiologists that are almost exclusively going to go on to be a professor somewhere, or they're going to work directly with an elite sports team. They're going to specialize in downhill skiing, and that'll be their niche, and they'll be there for 50 years, and you'll never have access to them unless you're on one of those teams. So it's hard to get them just because the job opportunities tend to go into those different directions where they're in academia and that's where they stay their whole life, or they're in the hospital setting and that's where they stay their whole life, or they're behind some sort of specialized team where, again, they're going to stay their whole life.
I think people need to, from a demand standpoint, people need to understand better the application to mainstream health.
Exactly.
So you think about it, like it's been important to pro athletes for decades. Okay, where am I carb burning? Where am I fat burning? And they're thinking of it from a performance standpoint. Well, for someone just trying to lose weight, I mean, this is
Extremely important.
extremely important, right? So the applications need to be better understood for the demand to be there for exercise physiology.
That's exactly right. And that's sort of where I like to focus, is taking the exact test that we would do in like a high performance setting, working with an Olympic athlete, and scaling them down to the individual that is at high risk for specific diseases, cardiovascular, metabolic diseases, using the exact same testing and adapting them in a way where we could hopefully reduce that disease risk across time.
That's awesome. Is there anything that stands out to you being a physiologist that you particularly love? Are there tools that we're going to talk about all the various tools that you use. Are things that you go, oh, that's really cool that I'm going to get to play with that?
Yeah, so I think some of the coolest things now are the advancements in wearable technology. So you were speaking about how individuals can access some of these benefits. I think Garmin is doing an excellent job. So those Garmin Forerunner watches that they came out with, they've been doing it for a few years, but they have adaptive training plans that have actually gotten really good. So if you just wear that thing and go outside, go on jogs, go on walks, eventually after, I don't know, maybe it's around 2 weeks, it'll start to tell you, hey, we think you should do this today. And if individuals don't want to spend anything more than $200 to affect their health, get that and just follow what it says. Just do what it says. It's going to lead you on a path where it's trying to increase your VO2 max while not overtraining you. So it has some logic in there to sort of help prevent overtraining while sort of guaranteeing progressive overload. And it's excellent, in my opinion. I've been testing them for years. And the recommendations are actually pretty similar to some of the recommendations I would give to beginners here in the lab.
That's pretty cool.
Does that work well, Tristan, for folks that are, incorporating resistance training, other types of training well into their workout curriculum?
That's the weakness currently. Is resistance training is extremely difficult to quantify in one of these wearable devices because we need your loads with resistance training, and there's just not a good way to do that. We don't have barbell velocity very easily. And it's so easy with cardiovascular exercise because all you need is the heart rate and hopefully GPS data, so you can get some good pace data and things like that. But yeah, that's where the advancements need to come.
Yeah. I have noticed, I guess due to the sensors that they have in the Garmin watches, that I'm sure you guys have seen this. You can go into Garmin Connect after a workout. Let's say you did, shoulders and, you did, say, a shoulder press and squatted, and it will pinpoint with good accuracy and show you the muscles trained that day with decent precision. Yeah,
and that's where it's going. So give it 2 or 3 years, and then probably this issue will be solved, and you can just strap on a Garmin watch and just listen to it. That's my hope, at least.
That's really cool. It's funny, when I first got my Garmin when we were here, it'd been a couple of years since I'd had a Garmin on, and I got this ping from it when I was sitting watching the golf on a Sunday afternoon, and it said, it looks like you've had a lovely rest day, hasn't it? And so I asked Barry, I said, isn't it funny how it tells you that you've basically been a lazy sack? And he said, Greg, I've never seen that. That was within the first week of getting it. I was like, okay, I know the company that I'm working with here with these two. I better start upping my game. But look, I'd love you to step through, we can talk about the Garmin and wearables, and that's really cool. But, we do have our own performance lab here for research. You're very much a part of our research team along with David. And tell us about, I want to step through some of the equipment we have here.
Absolutely.
So go ahead. What do we got?
Yeah, so we have a series of tests that we like to do in here to sort of get a good picture of what you're looking like from a health perspective. And we almost always start off with body composition. We use bioelectrical impedance analysis. We use an in-body for that, the 970, and we use the bod pod as well. So we have both of those, 2 different measurement technologies, so we can be pretty confident in the error. They're both going to have error, but if we do them both, we can be pretty confident in the results of those. Then we're going to work into things that are really beneficial for the machine learning modeling that we do here. And this is some of the physical measures that most people can do at home. So this is things like blood pressure, grip strength, waist circumference. These are really important and very predictive. So we always grab onto those as well so they can be incorporated into the models. Then we move on to some of the biomechanical testing. So we use the DARI motion for this one. This is a motion capture system where we can quantify your biomechanics as you go through like a functional fitness exercise routine. Very simple: shoulders, spine, hips, things of that nature. We can see any risk you may have. So any valgus that is out of place that we need to fix, and any asymmetries. This is really good at sort of preventing some of those orthopedic injuries that we might be able to detect really early. And then we move into the metabolism testing. So we look at substrate utilization, both resting and during exercise. And the goal of the exercise testing that we do is to get your ventilatory and lactate thresholds for very precise exercise prescription.
Well, that was a lot.
That is a lot. Quick question for you, Tristan. I wasn't aware of this until learning from you the variation of in-body machines. How many different ones, I guess, in-body models are there, and is there a lot of variation that you see? Because I think some people probably see an in-body in their gym or their health club, for example.
Yeah. So there's quite a few models, and they've been advancing them a lot. I'm not sure how many they have. Maybe 6 different models. We use the highest power model, so you get extra frequencies in there. So higher fidelity data, and generally that's going to be the one you want to tend towards. The one you see in your gym is probably going to be maybe 3 times less powerful than the one that we're using here. So you are going to get less data. So might not be able to get visceral fat area or things of that nature that R1 is able to get. It's still better than nothing. But importantly for those, like if you're going to use one of those in just your local gym or something, they have an in-body or bioelectrical impedance at all, you have to make sure you don't lift prior and make sure you're well hydrated. You don't want to be dehydrated. You don't want to be overhydrated. Those are going to be the biggest things that are going to influence error in that device.
Don't lift before.
Don't lift before. Yeah.
I'm sure most people aren't doing that.
Yeah, they'll step on it right after a lift, most likely. Yeah, definitely don't do that.
What happens if you do that?
Yeah, it's going to just totally change. So you're gonna cause muscle damage, which is going to break some of those muscle fibers in there. It's going to change the way these electrical frequencies travel through the muscle.
Do you get a better score though?
You can. You actually could.
Are you asking for a friend?
So go on.
I've seen that pretty often. So an individual will actually look like they have lower body fat after they've come in after a workout.
So that's how Barry gets under single digits.
That's my trick.
That's my trick. Yeah, weren't we laughing about the VO2? I mean, VO2 is not a priority here, but we have the VO2 machine. I've been talking to you about it, and I'd always laugh when we get VO2 testing, and you kind of try and hold your breath and things towards the end to see if you could elevate the score.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I generally don't let individuals do that here when we do it. So I'll mark you at whatever your actual VO2 was without the cheating. But
Always competitive.
There are ways to manipulate it.
That's awesome. So when I've heard you speak about, and at the end you touched on metabolic health. I want to just touch on that a little bit more. So right here you have the resting, where we lie on the table. Take me through the actual protocol of what you're doing and what you're seeing in our metabolic testing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the resting metabolic rate test. So we want to get a few things for that. And these data are really important for dietary interventions. So this is going to let us know how many calories are you burning without exercise included, and where are those calories coming from. So at rest, do you have an issue with fat oxidation? And does that fat oxidation issue translate over to the exercise as well? So if we have an individual lie down on that table and we see that when they're completely rested and fasted, of course, that they're burning 85-90% carbohydrates, there's likely an issue there. So their body is overly reliant on those carbohydrates. Again, I'm outside of an athletic perspective, so there are some specificity in some training and some diets that might make an athlete look like that on purpose. But if we're talking general health and we see that on an individual, this is very much metabolic syndrome, potentially diabetes. You're going to see an elevation in the resting metabolic rate in that case as well. And it'll give us an indication that we need to modulate your diet a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And can you do that? I mean, that's the resting side. And then, when you've put us on the bike, take me through that lactate testing.
Yeah, so when we put you on the bike, the goal is similar, but the body under load and not under load reacts pretty differently. So once we put your body under load, so like say we're on a cycle ergometer and we start applying watts to you, the body is going to do its best to be as efficient as possible, not waste any energy. And when the body is doing that, it allows us to sort of see where it breaks.
Mhm.
So we can see if those extreme inefficiencies are occurring. So for example, the first lactate threshold, zone 2, that everyone knows about. We'll be able to see where that occurs on the heart rate spectrum for you. So that individual that has, say, a 90% fat oxidation, potentially type 2 diabetes, when we put them on the bike at a very low heart rate, 95, maybe 110, they're going to hit their zone 2. So at a very low wattage as well, maybe 50, maybe 100 watts. So this is going to mean they have a super low functional capacity and a low ability to oxidize fat at all. This is very common. And this is one of the primary things that we want to improve in an individual with metabolic syndrome or someone that's at risk for diabetes. We want to increase their ability to oxidize fat. So push that zone a little bit further up. So an individual like that, I'd like to push that zone 2 up to like maybe 130, 135 beats per minute of their heart.
How do they do that? Through
Specific training. You want to spend a lot of time right inside of that zone. And so this is the hard part for somebody that might be diabetic. Say their zone 2 is at 100 beats per minute. That might be just walking and maybe not even walking outside. If they walk outside, maybe they're at 120 and they've already blown way past that threshold. So they need to get really specific with their training and spend a lot of time. That's why you generally don't want to get down into that position because it's really hard to get out of. And what you'll see is their second ventilatory threshold or second lactate threshold will be really low as well, but it'll be really big. So their zone 4 will, again, occur at a much lower heart rate than it should. So maybe it's at 135, and they basically just spend their entire time in this high carbohydrate metabolism, which generally is very inefficient. You don't want to just live there all the time. And this is the very common phenotype of what we see in somebody that is at risk for diabetes or potentially has diabetes.
Well,
And Tristan, I think I've read before that zone 2 training is primarily used in sports like cycling. By cyclists, they're registering zone 2. Is it like approximately 80% of the time that they're training?
Yeah, about 80% of the time. Yeah, so it depends. But yeah, 80 to 95%.
For the reason you mentioned, it's more efficient.
It's hyper efficient. And if they're able to increase their ability to stay in that, they're going to just fatigue less. So if they can maintain that, say, during a race as long as possible, they're going to save that glycogen and that glucose for when they really need to push.
I wonder if we should dive a little into like the lactate test, how it works, like what we're actually measuring.
Yeah.
And maybe compare the metabolically challenged case you mentioned to maybe a normal athlete and an elite athlete, sort of, because that might just help create the picture of how we're
that's
taking what was used for elite athletes to mainstream and applicable.
That's an excellent idea. So I'll start with the super elite athlete. How about that? So in, say, an Olympic cyclist, for example, say a really, really elite cyclist, they are going to, in their zone 2, it might occur in a wattage, maybe it's 230, 260, something like that, watts, that they're pushing where they're still fully efficient. So they're hyper efficient in this capacity. And they're able to push up into the 400s, 500s for total wattages before this test went. So in those really high wattage, 220, 240, 260, something like that, they'll still be holding like 2 millimole lactate. So they have not reached the point at which their body is unable to clear that lactate. So it maintains in a steady state. Let's look at...
And the lactate measurement, the 2 millimole, the lactate's what we're actually measuring.
Yeah, the lactate is what we're actually measuring.
With the finger prick.
And that with the finger pricks. Yeah, so we do finger elio prick for that, depending on the athlete. And that is going to correlate with the ventilatory threshold. So these individuals will also have a mask on, and we'll be measuring the ventilatory threshold and the lactate threshold at the same time to make sure those are corresponding with one another. So they're at 220 watts where their threshold is. Now let's take that to the exact same test to a diabetic. They might be hitting that exact same threshold at 55 watts. So even though they might be 120 pounds heavier than that Olympic athlete. So, and their functional capacity relative to their weight is just so low in comparison. So they're so inefficient with how their metabolism is working that the body has to shift more rapidly into these high glycogen metabolic states. And so that's sort of the difference. And VO2 max wise, let's use that. That's going to be your zone 5. So you have that cyclist, maybe theirs is 80, 85 VO2 max. You have the exact same individual at risk or has type 2 diabetes, you might see a 35 in there. So their overall capacity to utilize oxygen in their skeletal muscle is just so low in comparison, even though that individual is so much larger.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the measurement of lactate is lactate is an indicator of burning carbs.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So if someone were to ask, how do I know if I'm burning carbs or burning fat? Low lactate means
More
burning
fat.
fat versus an untrained non-athlete. They might be hitting the high lactate and they're not burning fat.
Yeah, and this is sort of an interesting piece that I see in the general population. So if you take somebody that is just like a recreational athlete and you have them warm up, they're not going to say they start feeling good until they hit zone 4 generally. So that would be around 4 millimole lactate. And this is generally the time at which fat oxidation stops. And this is where people are like, oh yeah, I'm starting to feel good and get warmed up. So their entire exercise session is likely going to be above 4 millimole lactate. So really they're training their zone 4 and eventually zone 5. And they almost entirely skip zone 1, 2, and 3. Which might be fine for a duration, but if you do this across 20 years, that's when you start to have serious decreases in your ability to oxidize fat because the body is so used to being in those high lactate states, that high carbohydrate burn state, that it just wants to stay there, and you'll feel like you're not performing optimally unless you're in those high lactate states. It's easy to get stuck there.
Tristan, is there a way for people at home that don't have access to a facility or ability to test lactate like we're talking about? Is there a way for them to approximate, with some reasonable precision so that, because I'm sure there's a bunch of people that are going to listen to this and say, I have no idea what zone I'm in.
Yeah. So it's hard because everyone's metabolism is so different. But again, I'd probably default back to that Garmin. So Garmin is doing a really good job, and they have a lot of effort going at trying to identify specifically zone 4 through the PPG sensors. So they have their zone 5 on you. They have a really good estimation of your VO2 max, and they're doing a lot of work to try to get that zone 4. Now, it's not as good as getting a zone 2 probably on an individual, but you're getting much closer. So if you can go out, wear that watch, you can actually do a test on there that's a lactate threshold test where they're estimating your lactate threshold just from going on like a 10-minute run. It's a progressive run, so you start off at a walk, then a jog, and then you're eventually going to go as hard as you can. And there's some inflection points. It's called detrended fluctuation analysis that they're doing in there to try to get that zone 4. And it's looking good. So it's, again, one of those things that 2 or 3 years, it'll probably be able to handle it pretty reliably.
What about like without a Garmin? Like I remember before all these things came about, it was like if you want to do your long, slow runs or whatever, you was like, well, can you talk to the friend next to you while you're running?
Yeah,
when you're on the bike, are you breathing? Like, is there an element of understanding your breathing?
Yeah, so if you could speak, maybe not as well as we are now, but a little bit less easily than we are now while you're on it, you're probably a good indication. And another good indication is, are you hungry afterwards? So say you go out and you go on a run and you come back and you're starving, you're very likely in one of those lower zones, high fat oxidation. If you come back and you're like, I do not want to touch any food, you were likely in a high lactate state for a long time.
That's something I hadn't realized. I have noticed anecdotally that after an easier long ride, I'm very hungry.
You're starving, yeah.
But after a really hard hit workout, I'm just not.
I'm exactly the same. It's the first time I've ever heard that, but
I never
it makes sense.
Me too.
It makes sense.
We learned
We just learned something. Okay, we're good. That's unreal.
I'm wondering if there's any guidance, like for people who don't, since most people don't have access to an exercise physiologist. Like what I have seen anecdotally is like an elite. If I were to rate my perceived effort 1 to 10, where 10 is just all out, maybe 7 is kind of a hard cardio, somewhat hard cardio run. So like elite athletes, they seem to be at a higher effort level, like they might be at an 8 or maybe even higher, but able to stay in their zone 2.
Yep.
And sort of amateur athletes like myself are sort of, like we're maybe at a 6 or 7 in our zone 2 effort level.
Yeah.
But then someone with metabolic condition, if they're just walking, getting to the zone 2, maybe they're at a 5. I think there's important knowledge to apply because everybody may think, okay, 70% effort is my zone 2.
You're exactly right. So I would sort of put it in like 2 categories. So if you are a new exerciser or you know you're a pre-diabetic or have diabetes, generally your zone 2 is probably going to occur at a rating of perceived exertion around 3. So when you feel like, hey, this is a 3, you're probably pretty close to a zone 2. And when you feel like this is a 7 or an 8, that's probably your zone 4. Now, like you noticed with elite athletes, they'll say a 7 is their zone 2. So they might be in zone 2 and they're like, yeah, this is a 7. So it shifts at a certain point where, and it's probably because they're so efficient. So as soon as they feel like they're outside of that efficient energy pathway, they're like, this is getting hard. Whereas for the general population, it's about half that. Yeah. So that is good. Yeah. If you're at a 3, if you're a new exerciser and you're at a 3, probably pretty good indication that you're in zone 2.
There's very few elite sports that stay at zone 2. I mean, I think the Tour de France cycling, but I can't think of many other sports where there's...
It's your steady state sports that go for a long time.
I don't know. Like
that was actually going to lead into my next question, because I've noticed that even, like rowers training for a 6-minute race, they train in zone 2, even though the actual race is not at all in zone 2. Like in canoe paddling, we got a 4 or 5 minute race. Like, and I'm starting to see like some of the better ones are training in zone 2. Maybe you could talk how can zone 2 training help like the mass of us amateur athletes?
I think Peter Attia probably had the best sort of analogy for this one, and it was his triangle. So your zone 2 is the base of that triangle, and it's literally called your base training when you do it. And the goal is to have as much area inside that triangle as possible. So if the base is your zone 2 training and the peak is your VO2 max, you want as much surface area of that triangle as possible. So even when these athletes are doing a 6-minute race, they're trying to get as much area in there as possible. That's basically their functional capacity. Their capacity to work is in there. So you might have a really skinny triangle with a really tall peak, but the guy that has a much wider triangle in the peak.
And just for the audience, the surface area that you're referring to is time? Or what's the
It's sort of
dimension?
functional capacity. Yeah, so it's ability to do work in there.
How would they measure that other than time? Is time the measurement, or is there a different measurement for
It's probably volume. Yeah, so it's time and intensity at the same time in there.
Got it.
It's funny you say that. On average, I would run 100K a week when I was an athlete a long time ago. And I'd always break it down that probably 80% of it was, we'd call it best easy pace.
Yeah.
Again, this is before. And it never meant slow. I never liked the word slow in my training, but it was best easy pace was meant I could be running fluidly and comfortable, probably was around zone 2. But then there was a good 20% and even 5% well above race pace, like really trying to get getting sort of the nervous system turned on almost. And then there was sort of 15% at that race pace. It was interesting when we used to break it down just for that for running more so, but swimming, we were in zone 2 nearly all the time. Like we just never needed to do that top stuff. That's cool.
I've heard Attia's explanation of that. I'm just trying to figure out how to simplify it even more. Yeah. And tell me if I'm wrong. The way I've started to explain to people after learning from you on this is that you have to train your 3 energy systems.
Exactly correct. Yeah.
And if
some people don't like that, but yeah, I still like that.
And if you're always training hard, you never train your fat burning energy. You're only training 2 of your 3 training systems, and you'll never maximize your potential.
That's exactly the case.
How do you distinguish those 3?
Those 3, yeah. So you have your aerobic system down at the bottom. This is fat oxidation. It's a slow energy system, but produces a ton of energy, maybe 4 times the energy as the others. You move up 1, and you move into carbohydrate metabolism. This is much faster, but less efficient. There's byproducts. And then you have your PCR system. So this is your creatine, your phosphocreatine system. Very low capacity, but extremely fast, explosive energy. And that is sort of the base of the pyramid from the bottom to the top in there. And you get faster energy, but much, much less efficient as you go up.
Is it like you have a football background, American football, and their plays are so short and powerful, right?
That's your phosphocreatine system.
So they're these kind of professional athletes. They're probably not spending a lot of time in zone 2 unless it's for some sort of lymphatic system drainage or something else. But it's so explosive that they spend more time up in
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up, since college football, as you probably know, is starting soon. So I'm super excited for the season. I'm a college football junkie, as you guys know. given what we're talking about right now, is it beneficial for a sport like that to train in zone 2?
Yeah, so this is where specificity comes in, and probably not. So probably if they spent, say, a lineman, for example, spends any time in zone 2 outside of their normal training where they just inherently are in it, they're probably going to have to sacrifice some power, some size, some strength. So that there is a trade-off.
Yeah.
Some sports do not want to spend too much time in a zone 2, and they want to spend as much time as possible, 3, 4, 5, 6 even. Yeah.
It's funny. I had a physiologist on my podcast, and he was training America's Cup grinders. They now do it on the bike, but in the past they used to do it with their arms. And he said, I had them doing a lactate test. And he said, these guys were huge buffalo men, and he said they came from endurance sports. He's like, we're going to do sort of 4 by 1 minute tests on this lactate machine. It's developed, and they just went so hard, so fast. They created so much lactate. And he said they got about 20 seconds in, the whole test was done. They couldn't actually do any more. There was actually zero endurance component to these guys. He's like, I learned a lot in that one test as these guys completely suffered. So like you said, there's real horses for courses.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's specificity. It's totally sport specific.
Yeah. I've got a question for David and Barry, actually, because, we have this research lab here. I'm curious what you guys have found has been the most learning for you in the whole experience of working with Tristan. And has there been anything that kind of stood out to you as like, oh, that's kind of cool?
I'll let Barry start it. I'll think about how to narrow it down because I could go on for hours of learning from Tristan. But Barry, you want to?
Yeah, sure. I think mine's probably simply stated what we've been talking about in zones, zone training, and I've been doing the gym rat type workout for since sport at a young age, and going and squatting, bench pressing.
Hasn't worked at all.
Yeah, that was my passion, and I think as we got into this business and working with people like Tristan, it's taught me about zone training, and not necessarily for sport, but for the health, the metabolic benefits. Right, that was something I was naive and unaware of how to think about those things. And I have diabetes in my family. So it's very important to me to understand, not just exercise for the sake of having power, having fun, but, is it having the profound health impact that it can have? So learning the zones has been very instrumental.
That's an extremely common sort of phenotype to fall into. And it's the one that I would even prefer to do. I just wish it was potentially sustainable, but it's you go to the gym 6 days a week and you lift every single time. Maybe you run a mile, on the day you're not lifting in the gym. This is very common. And what your metabolism does is it specializes. It specializes to make sure that you get really good at doing that, especially after you've done this for 10, 15, 20 years, something like that. And the body just completely skips over the aerobic system because it's giving you what you're requesting of it week by week. And I don't think we fully know the health impacts of that. So what if you're very lean, low body fat, low visceral fat, and you do a routine like that? How much cardiovascular risk, for example, is that adding to you because you don't train that aerobic energy system so much? Even though you're getting heart rate up when you lift, you're not focusing on that fat oxidation at all at any point in time. Yeah, I don't think we know, but I think David might actually be able to answer that. That's my hope for in the next few years, is to see what are the health impacts of doing a routine like that? Even if you're lean and you look healthy from the outside, is that still contributing to risk?
Yeah, I think that's one of the key research questions we're addressing. What is the right mix of exercise? Because strength's very important for sure, but just doing strength without all the aerobic, and then the aerobic is split into fat burning, carb burning energy systems, and maintaining power. So I'm looking at my health scores. I think it's gonna it'll come around like this 2-2-2 like workout 6 days a week, two of each. But we want to prove that with the studies.
Exactly.
Certainly, I think the only thing real known in exercise is something's better than nothing. You've got all kinds of arguments that one is better than the other. Like your weightlifting, you won't fall as much. The high intensity is more time efficient and builds mitochondria, and then the low intensity is burning fat. But I'm also, in terms of goals, I would say I'm mostly training for longevity, but I'm also a competitive person. So I ask a lot of these questions, and And as you know, I've been working with you on just all kinds of tests, right? From the extended lactate test, like what happens past the 30 minutes, out an hour or greater, or the all-out 30 seconds, getting the lactate up to like 25 or 26. So it's all to sort of understand that fundamental understanding of the human body. And I think I've known you, 4 years now?
Yeah.
So we've been doing all kinds of crazy research on that. But I think we want to, like, I'm sort of, I think of myself as training for what Peter Attia says is the centenarian Olympics.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he realized I'm exactly the same age as him. So we're going to hit 90 at the same time, and I'm going to be there to challenge. But in order to compete at that level, okay, I can't be thinking of just training for something 6 months or a year from now. I got to be thinking about actually living that long and being in good health. So it's about that balance, which is, I think, different than training for something a few months to 6 months.
Absolutely,
6 months out.
It's well said, mate. That's very cool. I was wondering, as you're doing all the research, how much of it becomes this N of one? I think when we all first met just over a year ago, I think I gave the analogy of ancestral health, and if we were out there having to kill the woolly mammoth, and Barry be the guy would catapult onto the back, he'd be getting in from the top, and then my natural, I'd be able to help stab it. You're the bigger guy up front with the, stabbing him underneath, and then I've got to get the meat back to the village, and I have a decent VO2 and reasonably strong, so I'd have to run it back so it stays fresh. And my point in that whole story is like understanding that it's hard to just swipe a paintbrush across all of it and go, yeah,
we're trying to get down to the commonalities, right? Like, so for some people it may be harder to train that low zone, and I'm one of them. Actually, I naturally tend to be an explosive athlete. Like, I've always done better and enjoyed more the high intensity short bursts. But then what I realized 4 years ago is that I wasn't training my zone 2 at all. I would work out hard every time. I was with the old school, no pain, no gain. And I would eventually burn out. I would eventually get sick because it was taxing my immune system. So finding that balance really helped me. But some people are more natural at the lower intensity levels in zone 2. But there are commonalities, right? The lactate level is actually the byproduct of the metabolism, and it's measurable for everybody, and it means the same thing in everybody, men, women.
I was going to say men, women. Have we noticed that women are...
No, that's the same.
Same across the board.
So the fundamental metabolism is the same, but how people, the level of difficulty, adjusting it, what kind of exercise works to improve their scores may be different. What kind of exercise improves their conditioning could be different. But that fundamental metabolism, that's the commonality we want to really understand so we can measure in all people and have individualized solutions.
Since you mentioned that, Tristan, have you observed any difference between men and women training zone 2 and the efficacy of?
Yeah, I've seen that there's some debate around this, specifically around menopause and things of that nature, but I haven't, honestly. So I have seen men and women adapt exactly the same, no matter where they are in their lifespan, given the same circumstances, like metabolic syndrome to metabolic syndrome and across. Yeah, I haven't noticed a difference. Men and women adapt the same to the same training stimuli.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, unless, of course, like if you have actual thyroid issues and things of that nature, there can be some other contributing factors, but healthy to healthy, yeah, it's the same. Yeah.
Zone 2 is probably the hardest it might be the hardest to stick to.
Yeah.
Also, so someone may say it doesn't work for them.
Yeah,
maybe because
they
they can't actually get themselves, because it can be boring.
It is boring, and you need to do a lot of it.
Podcasts.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can do it. Listen to podcasts.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, are you in zone 2 right now?
We're
doing a podcast. No, that's cool. I want to narrow in on one thing. We're talking about all of these testing and everything else, and we're building our Volo scores with the team. But one of the biometrics that is in our sort of top 10 biomarkers quite often, or top 15, is the waist circumference. So I was wondering, David, maybe if you could speak to that, what you've been finding in terms of waist circumference, and looking at waist circumference even compared to BMI.
It's a good question. If I had it my way, as far as what people would use as a universal measurement, we'd get rid of BMI and replace it with waist circumference.
Mm-hmm.
So we see in our data it's more predictive. It's also less biased. Like BMI, the actual equation is fundamentally biased in that you're taking weight divided by height squared. And so what happens is taller people end up with smaller BMIs than shorter people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even a correct normalization. Whereas waist actually is not too correlated to height. So even height to weight could be flawed in that way. In that way, we know it's especially for women, BMI is further off. Actually, the average, like the way the equation's made, because you're dividing by a number, dividing by height. Like a short woman on average will just be given a much higher BMI than a tall woman, even though they may be in the same shape with the same risks. So it's a terribly biased statistic. But the average 5-foot woman actually has the same waist circumference as the average 6-foot woman, which is something people don't realize. So there's no need to take the ratio. And for men, there's a slight correlation, but it's pretty small. A tall man will have only a slightly bigger waist on average than a shorter man.
And is this waist circumference, are you seeing it across all the scores, all the models that you're looking at? Is it a higher predictor in certain areas than others?
It's higher. It's about the same as BMI for some conditions, but for something like cancer, it seems to be much better. And I think because it's taking into consideration belly fat, I mean, it's pretty well known in the literature that specifically belly fat is more dangerous than fat in the rest of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so waist circumference will capture that, whereas BMI does not.
Tristan, the measurements that we have here in the lab, in body, the bod pod, do you find those to be fairly accurate with waist measurement? Obviously, the old tape measure, tape measure approach is.
This is probably the study we need to do. We might be coming up on having enough data to do it. So the in-body estimates waist circumference through the impedance, and we probably just need to compare. We'll probably need, 100 people in that sample. And once we have it, we could see. And
Very cool.
Any tips on how to measure one's
so
waist properly?
There's a lot of different methodologies for measuring it, but the UKB, for example, normalized everyone and just went from the belly button. So wherever your belly button is that's where they were saying that's your waist. And going from there, and it's just an easy way to keep it the same for everyone.
What about posture, breath? Those things can have heavy influence.
That's where it gets hard. And I'm not exactly sure how they controlled for that in UKB. If it's mid-breath or full exhale. Yeah.
I have another example where it's better than BMI is if someone actually has the motivation to start an exercise program and they put on muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So someone could be a lot fitter, but remain at the same BMI.
Same BMI, but significant body composition change.
And you'll see, okay, that person is healthier. They'll get a healthier health score, but BMI stayed the same.
Yep.
I had one other follow-up question for Tristan on the introduction of this kind of training, training that we're talking about. Have you experienced folks that had diabetes, say primarily type 2, go into remission?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so you can dramatically reduce the need for medication and get the A1Cs back down into a totally normal level by going through longer training plans. And it's not going to happen overnight, but 6, 12, 18 months, absolutely. Yeah. As long as they remain compliant.
What about using CGMs and things?
So
I've seen people make big changes.
Huge changes with the CGMs. And eventually we're going to have lactate in the CGMs. So it's just a matter of time before those microneedles and even sweat-based sensors are able to get lactate, which I think is going to be even more impactful than the glucose levels themselves, because you'll be able to modulate your habits all the time, all day, to be exactly perfect with whatever exercise goal you have. And even a baseline lactate level, I think, is going to be very predictive, because you can see a doubling in some individuals of just their resting lactate level to let you know something's going on. They use it in the hospitals for reasons like that as well.
Just for everybody's, CGM is a continuous glucose monitor.
Yeah.
It clips into your arm. If you haven't seen it, it can give you a good guide of what foods are doing to you. I have a funny story on this. My mother-in-law is using a CGM. My father-in-law refuses to put one on, so he just eats what she's eating. He thinks he's got. Does that work? I know.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely not.
I've tried to tell him it probably gets you 70 to 80% there,
Yeah.
but he feels great, so he doesn't have to put it in his arm either.
CGMs might be the most impactful behavior change mechanism you can do, and they've come down so much in cost in just the last few years, from like $1,000 a month to $100, maybe even less, that you can get at the store. And everybody who has tried it from a recommendation has changed their behavior.
Well, the software on the backside, the UX and UI features are way better as well. I remember when I was using it 4 or 5 years ago, the displays and learnings was terrible, but now it keeps you in that zone and it's almost gamified. They've done such a good job on them. Do you still need a prescription for them? Or?
You don't even need a prescription anymore. And and you'll see when you start, you'll see how many carbs you could have and what time of day. It's okay. Like in the morning after a workout, you can tolerate a lot more carbs and you'll see blood sugar goes down. But this whole, I think it's well known in research not to eat too many carbs at night. You have high blood sugar, and when you actually so if you don't have the glucose, you're like, I'll just have like a little piece of cake or whatever. When you actually see what it does to your blood sugar, and that it doesn't go down, and it might take hours during the night to go down from this high level. That's motivation to sort of be a little more careful about when you eat what you eat.
No, well said. We all know people that have had big impacts by using CGMs as actually moving forward.
One thing, just to back up what Tristan was saying, I kind of teed that one up for him. I did some quick research this morning in prep for the conversation with Tristan, and I was somewhat shocked to learn that bariatric surgery had about a 60%, and these are various studies that you can find, about a 60% reversal of type 2 diabetes. Intermittent fasting was about 55%. And one particular study I did a little bit of digging into was a 2017 study with 158 patients that introduced a zone 2 exercise program, had similar 60% reversal of diabetes. So when you think of it in that context and go, wow, somebody's willing to go through a surgery that's not a simple thing to go through, versus could they have achieved that same success with just implementing an exercise program? Not to suggest that's easy to stay on that track, but I think if people realize that, they might become more engaged and
the hard part about zone 2 is you don't see or feel anything, right? So after many, many months, you're going to start to feel like you have more energy, because you literally will. But it's hard. You don't get a pump like when you go to the gym, right? And you feel like you maybe did nothing. And it's something that it takes a long time to build. But it does speed up across time. So it's the slowest in the beginning, and the longer you stick to it, the faster the gains speed up with that zone 2. Yeah.
So what we're saying is wear a CGM and just do some Zotune training, and we're good to go.
And definitely lift some weights.
And do some weights. Okay.
Do you think and I wonder about this, we haven't done the research yet. Do you think it accomplishes a similar thing from a general health to just, let's say someone's walking a lot, they're not quite in their zone 2, maybe even not quite at zone 1, but let's say they go on 2-hour walks in the day, or if you're like walking on a treadmill desk, getting work done, do you think it can accomplish some of the same?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So you're still, even if you're below zone 1, you're still oxidizing fat, and you're telling your body, hey, we have this demand. Even if the demand's low, it's going to switch that. There is a demand on, and you're going to get all the beneficial effects of that. So yeah, absolutely. So even just stopping, if you say you work in an office, even just stopping your day, if you have a walking treadmill, amazing. If not, go for a walk and stop the sedentary stimulus that you have. Get it under load, even if that load is just a walk. Yeah.
All right, guys, I'm going to pose a question to you. I was debating with Laura this morning. You know these. We don't always agree on this show, and I think that's kind of good. I want to structure the importance of these 4 things and prioritize them 1 to 4. And I'm putting you all on the spot. I didn't send you this. Okay. So we have sleep, nutrition, exercise, and let's call it mental performance above the shoulders. What's the most important thing for health?
Wow.
And you can list them 1 to 4 if you can. If you can remember those 4, you refuse to do it, or you.
I mean, those are the 4 pillars, right? You need them all. So
David's shaking his head, saying, "I'm not playing your game, Greg."
Well, mental performance. Let's clarify one thing. That mental performance sounds like it could be an outcome, but you're referring to it more as
owning it,
intervention, like an intentional. What are examples? Is it like things like meditation?
Yeah, it could be meditation, could be practicing gratitude.
I think it's important for once to
socialization.
What's important, because being happy, there's nothing more important than being happy and enjoying your life, right?
True.
But are you talking maybe about the effects on health or longevity? Like what would be
Well, this is the thing. Is health and longevity your focus, or is living daily your focus? And I guess that becomes the debate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, living a quality life is the focus. And again, we can only define quality from the standpoint of like physically, you can physically do the things you want to do. You can, and I think everybody wants mental clarity, being able to be low stressed, right? So if quality of life is defined that way. Now you're going to make me choose
No,
one.
I don't mind if you guys skirt around it, because I don't want this to be here forever and then everyone's calling out, going, he said that. This is more of just, I don't mind that kind of an answer. Yeah.
I think if I consider my daily activities, it's hard to distinguish between, when I think of myself, between exercise, sleep, and nutrition, because I feel like I emphasize all of them. And as you guys know, knowing me as well as you do, there's things that are non-negotiables for me. Like I have to do some kind of exercise every day. And maybe the irony or coincidence, whatever you want to call it, of thinking of these 4 different legs of the stool is that they all kind of bleed into each other, right? Like my happiness and mental fitness is dependent on those other things, right?
And this is where I think it is a more N of 1. Like I actually do think we're all a little bit different.
This is highly, highly personalized, right?
It is.
For each person.
Yeah.
It sounds like for Barry, it's centered around exercise. For me, it's centered around exercise too. But I am, again, it completely mixes with the other 4. Like I am mentally happier. If I exercise, again, nutrition feeds in, right? If I'm not keeping nutrition, well, then I won't be as fit and be able to exercise as well.
It's all around energy, isn't it? It's all about energy.
And if I don't get enough sleep, well, then that's going to affect everything, right? I won't be as happy, but also I won't be able to be as fit. So I don't know. For me, it's around fitness. If you had made me choose one, but the combination of the 4 are just so important and interactive.
Let's ask our guest and our actual physiological expert here.
I'd go sleep, exercise, nutrition, then cognitive. That would be my order.
Sleep, exercise, nutrition.
So I have sleep at number 1 as well. I've been experimenting with sleep. Please go on. I've interrupted.
Yeah. So I think that in that sort of ladder is the requirement for the adaptations they will all achieve themselves in that order. You're not going to recover. You're not going to be able to exercise if you're not sleeping. If you're not exercising, your nutrition is not going to matter as much, because that's what is feeding. That's what's causing the adaptation in there. And then you're not going to feel good if you're not doing all those 3. So.
Yeah, that's a good answer. As much as I love exercise, if I'm in a position where I only got, say, 3 hours of sleep, and I can either have time to sleep 2 more hours or exercise, well, I'll sleep.
That's kind of what I wanted to get at.
So from a pure need, standpoint, Tristan's right. Like you just can't.
Well, I hang around enough A-type personalities. There's 3 here, and all my mates in triathlon, and they will be the kind that will travel around the world to do a race and then go, I got to get my exercise in. And I'm like, guys, you got to sleep. And so for me, my priority's always been sleep. And even recently, I'm just trying a new supplement stack and really upping the magnesium glycinate, which I've done in the past. And if people haven't explored magnesium glycinate, it is a fascinating supplement to help with your deep sleep for sure and your overall sleep. And
I'm going to give Tristan a tougher question though. What if you had to go from, say, optimal 7 hours sleep but no time to exercise, and lower that to 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I would do that.
Yeah,
I would
and
totally
get-
do
and
that.
get your
Yep.
exercise.
Yeah, as long as you're not. I probably wouldn't do any more than that, but yeah, I would sacrifice one if it meant you get any exercise.
And we see when we
That's
look
a great
at sort of the risk
Mhm.
risk curves with
Yeah.
with sleep, it's sort of like, okay, 7 is the healthiest people.
It's a typical David
6
question, by the way.
6, like 6 and 8 is like slightly
Yeah.
suboptimal, but then you start to see more health conditions once you get 5 and less.
And there's a discipline to that as well, which helps your mental performance too sometimes, where it's like, no. You know what I've realized recently? Maybe you can tell. I've noticed I'm using Aura and Garmin, but I've noticed if I get 1 hour of deep sleep, the light sleep and the REM sleep don't matter as much. If I get a good, solid deep sleep and I wake up at 5 hours, I can still function reasonably well. Whereas if I do 30 minutes of deep sleep, and even if I've done all right in the REM and light, it's useless to me.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So deep sleep's a priority.
I mean, you want all the cycles, but yeah, so you have to hit the deep.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating, guys. I think we can all agree on most of that.
Yeah.
Before we go, we have done overrated, underrated before, but I thought we could maybe even hit a couple that we've done because we do have a special guest with us.
So many tests today.
Well, I like to put you guys on the spot, keep you on your toes. If you haven't enough sleep, you're not going to be able to do this. And one of my favorite things to do is often come downstairs here and talk to Tristan and raise, what do you think of cold plunging, sauna and everything else, and get his opinions. So I thought this would be quick because you and I, we've all done most of these, but I do want to hear from Tristan. So let's start with cold plunging, overrated, underrated.
Contextually overrated. Yeah.
You want to expand or are you just happy to leave it?
Yeah. So if you are in any sort of strength or hypertrophy phase, very overrated. So I would use sparingly. Now, if it significantly impacts your cognitive behavior, that's when I think the opportunity cost will override the physiology cost of the cold plunging. So yeah, contextually overrated.
Can you dumb that down a little bit for folks? Like
Yeah.
think about hypertrophy and
So
performance.
if your goal is changing your body composition, for example, you're going to the gym and you're trying to put on a bunch of muscle, I wouldn't cold plunge. At least not anywhere near those lifting sessions. You are going to reduce the inflammation, and you will likely, across time, if you do this habitually, reduce the hypertrophy that you would get in the same amount of time. You'd be better off letting the inflammation come in, do its job, remodel that muscle, and moving on. You'll put on more muscle across time. Now, if you're already at a point where you have plenty of muscle and you get significant cognitive benefit from doing cold plunging, that's where opportunity cost says cold plunge.
What's the window that you would recommend for avoidance of cold plunging after?
That's the hard part. If you're doing a lifting plan that is effective, there's likely not a window where you could do it. So it'd be like 72 hours. By then you already have another lift, you know? So
Is this just because you've just bought a new cold plunge?
Yeah, well, I try to do it like at least 10 hours.
yeah, I
but
don't think you need to put on any more muscle. So I think you'll be just fine. Yeah.
I don't know. I could always put on more muscle.
All right. Do you guys want to add anything more to the cold plunging?
Yeah, I can't remember if we were asked this at a previous episode, but I would say if someone was saying everybody should do this, then probably overrated. I would say for me personally, I think I mentioned it's one of my top 2 biohacks that I know works for me. I just feel I could be stressed out, jump in, feel so much better. So I just feel better.
What time of day do you like to do it?
So I don't do it near my workouts. It's sort of I learned from Tristan, like that's definitely not right after a hard weight workout. Maybe not even the day of a hard weight workout. But I might, since I work out in the morning, I might do it in the afternoon, sometimes in the evening. But if it sort of has taken all stress from me if I have some inflammation. So for me, it absolutely works because I feel better. There's not enough studies that say it'll make you live longer. So if you don't like it, doesn't feel like it helps, then overrated in that sense.
I have one more question for Tristan on this. Do you think that there's any correlation between injuries and cold plunge?
That's a good question. Like, does the cold plunge potentially cause injury?
Or even prevent? Like, is there any benefit in inflammation reduction?
I think that's more of like an overall recovery question. So if that cold plunge is causing an increase in recovery, even if that's potentially cognitive, because we know that if you're in a very fatigued state, even mentally, you're at a much higher risk of injury. So if those cold plunges are reducing cognitive fatigue or something like that, or even physical fatigue, that's more, I would say, yeah. So it could potentially reduce it, but you generally want that inflammation in there to do that muscle remodeling. So it's almost, in my point of view, if say you cause a lot of damage and then you stop the repair of said damage, you'd probably be at a higher risk of injury given across a long time span.
Well, I'll add my final 2 cents on cold plunging. I feel like I've always overdone things, and my adrenals got completely shot by cold plunging to the point that I didn't get any more dopamine hits from it. I'd always use it for dopamine hits, and then it got to the point I just kept freezing myself, and I just become so don't overdo it. Is what I'd say.
How long were you doing it for, Greg?
I usually, depending on the temperature of the water, but if it's low 40s Fahrenheit, which is Celsius, I can't tell, but I would do 5 minutes, but then I'd fully submerge and hold my breath for 2 minutes. I'd try and do as much as I could. I start searching for the dopamine effect, I think, after a while.
But I mean, like how many years did it take?
I used it as an athlete forever. We always travel with our cold plunge pool, and we were in short course racing. It was more to really, we did a lot after training VO2 work and that kind of stuff. But as we did more Ironmans and longer, we wanted to keep the inflammation, so we stopped doing cold plunging. But then when I started probably 5-6 years ago, even doing my podcast or anything, I'd always do cold plunging before anything where I wanted my brain lit up. But then I started, obviously, it felt great, to your point. I started doing it every single day. And I'm not adverse to going back to it, but I'm in a period where I'm not doing it now. I'll do a Florida cold shower, which is basically still lukewarm.
Yeah, that's
Florida cold shower. Does that exist?
It's not really. Let's do one or two more while you're here. Static stretching, overrated, underrated?
Overrated. Do dynamic.
Because that used to be a thing. They said never do dynamic stretching.
Yeah.
When I was growing, I don't know, 40 years ago, don't do dynamic stretching.
Yeah, generally, especially if you're about to do some weightlifting, just do low load, whatever the movement is you're about to do. That's definitely preferred. Yeah.
All right.
There's still a place for it, of course, but overrated.
Yeah. What do you call yoga? What do you call yoga? That's dynamic stretching, right?
I mean, it depends, but
yeah. You guys have an opinion on stretching?
I like dynamic.
You like dynamic? I need to do it. I'm terrible. You need to write my training.
I'm terrible at it too.
I never do it. My DARI result shows it.
I'll say overrated just because I haven't seen link to longevity.
Mm-hmm.
But if dynamic helps reduce injury, then I'll do it before my workout.
Mm-hmm. This next one's probably too broad to give a definite answer, but supplements, overrated, underrated?
Yeah, so overrated in general, just because there's a large amount of them, and probably a lot of them don't have the efficacy behind them, but there are some that absolutely do what they're meant to do. So your caffeines, your creatines, things like that. But yeah, as an industry, definitely overrated.
I've talked to you about it in the past. You said that even the studies have a strong placebo effect.
It's
hard to measure.
Of course, a placebo effect that goes into a lot of these, and a lot of them are not more powerful than the placebo effect. So why don't you just take some Gatorade or something and tell yourself it's whatever supplement it is.
I'd say overrated as well. And I say that primarily because, and I've become accustomed to asking this question anytime a friend or family member asks me about a supplement. The thing I always ask them is, what are you going to measure?
Mm-hmm.
And literally 90 to 100% of the time, they look at me like I have two heads and go, I don't know. And I'm like, well, if you can't measure what it is you're seeking to change, as we always talk about, how do you know if you're having a positive impact? Right?
Exactly.
Well, we've got consensus, overrated.
Yep.
Even though I am the one who takes probably 25 different supplements a day, I still tell people. I mean, most people are not going to pay for 25 supplements. And first of all, only probably 5 of them have some research, but it's natural stuff that I would normally get in healthy food. So I don't think it's hurting me either.
Yeah.
But really, there's only, I would say, the few that actually have strong evidence are probably the least expensive ones. Like I think vitamin D, there's been tons of literature shows it'll increase your vitamin D level, and that helps prevent illness. Creatine has a really good body of evidence at this point. Zinc for avoiding getting sick. There might be one or two more that actually have strong evidence, but fish oil, yes, thank you. Yes, fish oil has, and I believe magnesium as well. But that's more important only if you have a deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So really, beyond those 5, all the others, I mean, they got some studies, and supplement companies are sponsoring the studies, and you can dig and find a study. Mm-hmm. But I would say the evidence is very weak that you need to do that.
Great answer. And I agree. I think there's periods of time where you don't take any supplements and you tick things along pretty well, and you're like, oh, actually, I'm still doing all right. You've heard me say I like majoring in the majors, the 4 things we talked about before, focusing on sleep, exercise, nutrition, and your what you think has a direct impact on your physiology. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big component of that. But guys, this has been a brilliant episode. And Tristan, you're a wealth of knowledge, mate. It really is great.
It's great to finally get you on. We've been
Yeah.
begging him to come on for a while. He's going to do it.
Yes. Audience, if you love Tristan, please give us feedback and tell him we need to have him on more often. Mm-hmm. Really, really special to have you here, mate.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, always learning. And Barry and David, great questions too today, guys. It was, I think we all learned something. That was really cool.
We did. We learned something from Tristan we hadn't even heard before.
Yeah.
Every time I talk with Tristan, I learn something new.
Yeah, it's great. And for everybody listening, look, if you've got feedback, if you've got questions for us, please reach out. We're growing this show. We're learning ourselves, and we value you listening to us. But episode 7 in the books. Well done, guys.
Awesome.
Cheers.